Let's talk about the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, because after NAB and the announcement of this thing, people are really getting excited. This is a follow-up to the Pocket Cinema Camera as well as the Cinema Camera itself. The Pocket Cinema Camera 4K touts that feature that it shoots 4K, and it shoots 4K RAW internal to either SD cards, UHS-II, or CFast 2.0 cards. That's really, really cool. And the most exciting thing about this camera is the price point. For $1,300, you get a ton of features. 4K 60, you can also shoot windowed 1080, 120 frames per second. You've got a 5-inch touchscreen. This thing is awesome. I got hands-on with it at NAB, and it is a beautiful LCD screen. So many camera manufacturers go cheap on their LCD screens, and this being built right in at such a great high-quality display is awesome. And the touchscreen and the menu interface is just like all the other Blackmagic cameras. It's fantastic. I love using their menus. It's just a joy. It's almost fun to get in the menu and just play around and change features. It's awesome. The one thing I will say that's a downside about the screen is that it's not articulating, so you can't rotate it like I can rotate this GH4 screen, so I can actually flip it around and do it kind of vlog selfie style. You can't do that with the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, but I mean, there have to be some trade-offs for the price point of $1,300. You've got the micro 4/3 lens mount. It's also a micro 4/3 size sensor, so you can use a lot of the micro 4/3 glass that a lot of people like, whether it's for the GH4, GH5, or other micro 4/3 cameras. That glass is going to work great on the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. And let's not forget that also gives you the option to use a speed booster if you do want that kind of wider Super 35 look and get an extra stop of light and you want to use some of your Canon glass. I mean, a ton of people have speed boosters nowadays after, shooting with micro 4/3 for so long and becoming kind of a standard. So adapting any of the glass that you may already have or finding some glass online that's available should be pretty easy. You can either use the native micro 4/3 stuff, or you can get a speed booster, get that kind of wider Super 35 look, and put some Canon or Nikon glass, whatever you want. That's kind of more that full frame or APS-C sized lenses you can use on the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K as well. For this camera, Blackmagic has kind of gone away from that Ursa or Ursa Mini traditional video camera form factor where it's something you might want to put on your shoulder, kind of bigger, broadcast, ENG, or even cinema camera style. This thing, they call it the Pocket Cinema Camera. I wouldn't really want to put it in my pocket. It's not quite that small. The thing is actually pretty large, but they've gone for more of a DSLR, mirrorless, point and shoot type of camera where you would take photos and video, kind of like a hybrid. It does have a photo mode, but the primary reason you would buy a camera like this is to shoot video. 4K RAW or ProRes, you've got all the flavors, whether it's HQ, LT, or proxy. You can do that internal, as well as record external over the USB-C port to kind of an external SSD. This thing will take LP6 batteries, so those are the Canon batteries that a lot of people are familiar with. They're small, they're lightweight, they're pretty easy to have in your pocket, just carry on with you. I imagine they'll run out pretty fast on the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, but hopefully you've got a lot of LP6s lying around, or you can get some. They're fairly affordable. You can get the official Canon LP6 batteries, or you can also find some cheaper, more affordable LP6s as well. I'll put a link to this stuff down in the description so it's easy to find. I have a ton of these batteries laying around, so it's really not that big of a deal. I'm sure most people have these batteries, although we will see what the battery performance is like on the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. Like I said, I wouldn't expect too much, but the fact that these batteries are so cheap and easily accessible it's not a huge downside for me. Now, the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K isn't quite as impressive as its big brother, the Ursa Mini 4.6K. Obviously, there's more resolution with the Ursa, as well as the extra dynamic range. The Ursa Mini 4.6K will have around 15 stops or so of dynamic range, while the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K has around 13 stops, which is still impressive in its own right. So on paper, this thing looks phenomenal. It's got a ton of great features. It's got the right price point, and holding it, I will say it's a little bigger and bulkier than I would like. It doesn't quite feel as good as a proper DSLR. They've gone for that form factor, but it just doesn't feel quite right. My hands-on at NAB, I was a little underwhelmed with how it felt in the hand. A lot of times I don't shoot video handheld though, so I'm not too concerned about the form factor being an issue for holding the camera because I really don't shoot that way. But I can imagine for some people who do shoot handheld, they're gonna feel like it's a little maybe uneven or unbalanced or a little unwieldy in the hand. It felt a little big, a little boxy, not quite comfortable to grip it. It might be something that you end up getting used to, but again, for the price point, there really isn't anything that can beat it at this point. The only thing close to the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K in terms of price and performance would be something like the GH5 or the GH5S. Those cameras have additional features like internal stabilization on the GH5, as well as really good low light on the GH5S. We'll see how the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K does in low light. It does have a dual ISO mode, so I expect it'll actually do pretty well in low light, which is something the Blackmagic cameras aren't really known for. They're not really known as good low light cameras. That's a kind of a smaller feature for me, but it may be very important for some shooters out there who really like to shoot with limited light. And you know, if you're shooting outdoors at nighttime, or you just don't have a ton of lights or a ton of power, maybe you're doing everything battery operated in the field, having a good low light camera, it can be really important. Some people will probably criticize the smaller sensor size compared to full frame or Super 35. Micro Four Thirds is smaller, but again, you can fix that with a speed booster. There is no internal stabilization, and the form factor and the battery may leave something to be desired. But for $1,300, there really is a lot to love here in terms of features and performance. There are a few things in that kind of faults category that you could criticize the camera for, but for that cheap of a price, I think a lot of people are willing to overlook those things and take the huge advantages, especially at this price point, which is why I think this is so popular. It may not check every box for every feature for every person, but I think it is pretty impressive what Blackmagic have done in terms of announcing something this competitive at such a low price point. They keep pushing the industry forward. We saw that with the initial cinema camera, the Pocket Cinema Camera, the Ursa Mini. They keep making huge advances, and this thing is supposed to come out in September, so that's coming up pretty soon. We'll see if that date gets pushed at all. You do have to take all Blackmagic release dates with a little bit of grain of salt. They tend to miss those ship dates by a little bit. I think they're getting better. They seem to be coming out with things more in line with their actual timelines. So I have my fingers crossed that this will actually come out in September, because I really am looking forward to having this camera out in the field, out on the market, so it can keep pushing things forward. Other camera companies are really going to have to step up their game and bring something to the table to compete with something like this at this price point. So many features, such a good price. It really makes a lot of sense why people are so eager to get their hands on this thing.